Hello and welcome back to the Cosmic Library, where you can read about the greatest stories in all the multiverse. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
We are doing the show in conjunction with Second Union. For more of the latest headlines and entertainment, please go to our website at wearesecondunion.com. Oh, wow. It has been a week, man. My job underwent a viral attack that took us offline for 2 weeks, and now we are all playing catch-up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, which is unfortunate during a period where I have two conventions and 2 weekends, so I don't have as much time to work overtime as I would really like. And but we did just get an invite to do press at Simi Valley Toy and Comic-Con, which is a one-day convention. I believe it's February 9th, 2020. And I can't speak for you guys, but I'm looking forward to a one-day just look-around type convention, something I don't have to be deeply involved in.
Sounds neat.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've done something like that. But as soon as I said that, I'm like, oh my god, I have to get ready for Ontario Comic-Con Revolution in a few months. They haven't announced much by the way of guests, but I think Jesse can agree. They get some interesting people to come there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti were super nice when we went last year. But, yeah. As a matter of fact, Jesse, are you interested in that one this year?
I can't say I would like to go, but I can't say my finances would be kosher with that.
Yeah, TBD, right?
Yep.
Story of my life.
Yeah. Joanna, how are you doing?
Been busy.
Mm.
Really busy.
Ah.
Files up to the ears, but I've managed to get them down to the ankles. I guess that's progress?
I suppose. It sounds kind of uncomfortable and not exactly child-friendly.
No, it's like wading through shark-infested waters. It's a,
Oh, I love black sails.
office job.
Yeah.
It's not that much fun. Paper cuts and hand sanitizer, let me tell you, do not go together.
Oh, yeah, it sounds just like a comic book convention. Jesse, how are you doing?
Doing alright. Finally got my heater to work in my car.
Nice! Is it on full blast all the time now?
No.
Oh. I just didn't know if it was overfixed, so let me put it that way.
It's a simple fix, apparently.
Alright. Oh, yeah, I have to go to Anime Los Angeles this weekend. I got some Cosplay Wrestling Federation duties, as well as a general desire to sit down. I've pretty much decided that most of Saturday is going to be for me watching the NFL playoff games.
Sounds fun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dude, I found a slow cooker recipe. I'm going to make it.
Yes.
5 ingredients, peppercini beef hoagies.
Ooh.
As soon as I read it, I'm just like, well, that sounds easy and awesome.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a decent kitchen, and by decent I mean like a fully stocked one, I'd probably make some kind of nachos or tachos to go with it, but I don't think they'll have all the baking implements I need.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of making things too complicated, I'll just do one really well and then pick up some really good chips and vegetable dips.
Sounds tasty.
It sounds like a good way to spend a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Between that and like probably morning, PS4 games and everything, probably play a little bit of BioShock Infinite and God of War and really try and chill out. But it's kind of interesting to go to a convention. The most interesting thing I can do is like football and video games. Yay!
Are they still crying that you're not coming back?
Who?
ALA?
Every time I see one of their heads, that is one of the first questions. Hi, how you doing? So when you coming back? Oh, boy. I'm going to do this. Okay. Spoilers, I used to be a staffer for Anime Los Angeles. And apparently one in
Spoiler, I
decent
used to
standing.
help.
Huh?
Spoiler, I used to help.
Yeah, Jesse was good at it, too. But that is a conversation for another day. The subject of this week is issues 1 through 6 of DC's 2019 Young Justice series. We will get to that after the news of the week, and we will start with Marvel comic news. That's where we talk about the storylines that Disney is working on to present to us in the upcoming months. And believe it or not, I only have 4 stories of Marvel comic news this week. All X-Men related.
Whoa.
It's all X-Men. All of it.
Huh.
First up is a little tease that Marvel released regarding issue number 5 of the regular X-Men series. This is scheduled to come out this January 29th, 2020. Still being written by Jonathan Hickman. This one, though, has art by R.B. Silva, who has not, as far as I know, been on an X-Men book since the Dawn of X series ended. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what makes this one special, though, is if you remember, the X-Men series was supposed to have a different cast depending on who was needed for what mission, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The only ones we see on a regular basis would be different members of the Summers family and Cyclops, plus or minus Jean Grey. Well, this tease didn't involve any of those characters. In brand new versions of X-Men uniforms, you have Synch from Generation X, X-23 in something Wolverine-esque, and Darwin, who was last seen in the pages of X-Factor, who was also one of the Deadly Genesis team.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta admit, I like the upgrades to their costumes. They're all very recognizable, but very distinct.
I like them.
Yeah.
I mean, Synch hasn't been seen since he died towards the end of the first Generation X series. And obviously, if you haven't kept up, the X-Men now have a way to resurrect dead mutants get up to a certain point. Darwin, I haven't seen him since he became a de facto god of death to survive certain injuries. And I'm starting to question whether or not this is the same one, or if this is a guy that's been reborn. It's not something I can adequately answer right now. But X-23's new X-Men uniform, I like that a lot. It's very pseudo-Wolverine with black, blue, and gold. But it's not like the typical Wolverine pattern we've come to know over the last couple decades.
Yeah.
And the other thing I kind of noted was that it's interesting how all their costumes do and do not have X shapes in them. Did you guys notice that?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
With a weird shoulder pattern, and then it seems to break, and then it's continued from roughly the bottom of the rib cage down to the hips. I don't know. There's all kinds of things to infer about this. I can't tell if this is just design aesthetic or if somebody purposefully is trying to send a message with these costumes about how things are improved, yet something new, yet not quite something new.
It's familiar, but new, but not so familiar.
Mm-hmm. I'm especially excited to see what Silva's going to do with the art for this. I love the way he works. He has this art style that really brings out the fantastic in the image. Further on in Marvel comic news, Marvel has announced the details in the gear-up to the release of Wolverine #1, the new ongoing series for the long-time X-Men. It's being written by Benjamin Percy with art by Adam Kubert and Victor Bogdanovic. This will be his first regular series since he died in the Death of Wolverine miniseries. And first of all, comic book stores are going to get a Wolverine Through the Years primer. It's going to give fans an opportunity to learn more about Logan's long history, including his very first appearance reprinted from Incredible Hulk number 181. They'll also have scenes from memorable stories like Old Man Logan and Enemy of the State. There will also be a Wolverine #1 party variant that's done by the artist Raza, which is just a dejected Wolverine with a, a party blow whistle in his mouth while confetti falls around him. I can share the image with you. The best way to put this, he's not irritated, but he's definitely that guy who's standing on the periphery of a party who does not want to be there.
I know that guy.
Yeah, I've seen you make this face.
Yep.
But according to Benjamin Percy, quote, "The first issue is oversized. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say just how long it is yet, but know that it contains two separate stories that are extremely different in tone. One is a crime-adventure mystery story that wrestles with memory and identity. The other is a horror adventure with a dash of romance in it that tackles questions about history and the toll and responsibility of immortality," unquote. This is scheduled to go on sale February 19th. I'm so mixed on this because I'm curious about the story. However, I am not a
Wolverine.
Sorry?
You're tired of Wolverine.
I'm very tired of Wolverine. Logan and Bruce Wayne to me are two characters that have been around so long and so overwrought by reputation, they have become the cliches. Whether it be everyone's answer to how does he do that, he's Batman, to I am the best there is at what I do. I'm not really a fan of either one. But, I don't know, what do you guys think of Wolverine getting his own series again?
I'm like, okay.
Kind of over it.
I'll be honest, I'm looking at this cover, I realize it's like they took a stock image of Wolverine and kind of censored it. That's what it looks like. I mean, that party blower could easily have been a cigarette.
True enough. I think he quit smoking sometime not in the 1990s, but I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Further on, have either of you read Marauders #5?
No.
No.
Okay, that turned into a little bit deeper of a dive than I thought into the current status of a few of the characters in the series. A bit of it focused on Kitty Pryde and what she's going through, from the standpoint of a few different characters, and a lot of it was kind of surprising. Number one, it appears that Emma Frost has brought her brother, I believe his name is Benjamin, into the fold. No, Christian. His name is Christian Frost, which is, I don't know, somehow slightly biblical, but we'll get to that in a little while.
Yeah.
Anyway, Christian was on a mission with Iceman to replenish some of the missing ice at the South Pole. Okay? And he discusses with him that he notices that Storm and Iceman are staying really close to Kitty Pryde, practically acting like her secret service.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't take much into that when he said it. I just thought they were being overprotective of somebody who can't reach Krakoa via normal means.
Mm-hmm.
But then it gets into another conversation between Kate Pryde, I gotta remember to keep calling her that, and Emma Frost back on Krakoa in Hellfire Bay. Maybe in the White Keep, maybe in the Red Keep. I'm not quite sure where precisely. However, here's where it starts to get deep, in that Kate is worried that since Krakoan Gates won't work for her, what if Krakoan Resurrection won't either?
Oh.
And that, even though the two processes seem entirely different, this is a viable question.
It is.
There's no reason to believe that Sinister doesn't already have her DNA. There's no reason to typically believe that the process of the five, Egg, Hope, Proteus, Elixir, and Tempest, will not work to bring her back. But it still presents the what-if problem. I mean, those Krakoan gates are supposed to be available to all mutants. I mean, they let people like Apocalypse and Sinister right into it as soon as they agreed to come.
Right, but why not her?
Exactly. There's something very specific about her. And I'm not ruling out outside influence, although it just seems like it wouldn't be Sinister. The more toys on the island, the more fun he thinks it would be. Apocalypse, this seems beneath him somehow.
Yes.
Magneto, there's no purpose in it. This is one of the few other Jewish mutants he can talk to. And even though Emma Frost is benefiting greatly from what's happening to Kate, this isn't her speed. She would manipulate subtly. She wouldn't just throw a door up on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So I still don't know what's causing this. But the other surprising thing that we found out was that Emma feels for Kate in this situation, because it turns out the two of them are afraid of dying.
Mm-hmm.
Emma doesn't like the idea, especially since she's admitted that if she's resurrected, she doesn't know if she's going to come back as a skinny brunette. She's had a lot of work done.
A lot.
At least she admits it.
Isn't
True.
that what Proteus is for?
Sorry?
Isn't that what Proteus is for?
Possibly.
Deal with the augmentations they've gone through in life?
Possibly. But here's the most astonishing thing that I found in the read. Remember, the two of them met at the very beginning of the Dark Phoenix saga. Kate was a very young kitty. I believe she was like 13, 14. Emma Frost was leading the Hellfire Club on, I don't want to say a recruitment drive. They were just looking for mutants to conscript.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Emma admitted in the conversation, or no, Kate, after the two of them hugged, after a bit of a heartfelt conversation, Kate said that Emma probably would have made a great mentor for her when she was a child. But when Emma's walking away, she says, that's probably true, but I would have ruined you.
Honesty.
More than a bit, and we've talked before about how Dawn of X, it seems like a lot of personal relationships have shifted in ways we can't quite quantify.
Mm-hmm.
This relationship between the two of them is pretty much what I remember. They don't necessarily like each other, but they respect each other a ton. So, just more questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Always.
As a matter of fact, the last story I have in Marvel Comic News is about X-Men #4 from the regular series. This one was done by Jonathan Hickman with art by Lionel Francis Yu. And this actually added a little bit more fuel to the fires to certain questions. We've been talking on and off about who exactly is under that Cerebro helmet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier has not seemingly taken that thing off since he started this Krakoan initiative. Except, in issue number 4, he took it off in the middle of the economic conference.
Really?
Yeah, he took it off, and he flashed his bright blue eyes. He looks like Xavier. Now, some people have pointed out, especially on CBR, that in House of X, Xavier was depicted as having brown eyes. Now, there's a couple potential explanations for this, because I've been reading X-Men for an uncomfortable amount of time. And I can tell you that historically, Xavier's eyes have been blue. That's well established. So CBR thought maybe because of the brown eyes, this could be a duplicate. Well, there's a couple potential explanations, some mundane, some possibly fantastic. The potentially fantastic one is that Xavier is still somehow using the body I don't know what the right word to say is, but basically took over from Phantom X. He's still writing that body he had in Astonishing X-Men. The more mundane answer, it could have just been an art error.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Maybe in Dawn of X he was supposed to be painted blue, but they just started painting it brown and they found themselves in a rut they couldn't get out of.
that's why someone needs to Google it before they color it.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, you could blame that more directly on the editor, I think. But at least we do know that it's something at least resembling Xavier under that helmet now. There is no red diamond. Sinister's not playing a long con. His skin isn't turning blue. It's probably not Apocalypse at this point. Speaking of long-term storylines, though, it was kind of interesting because during the conversation with all these other economic leaders, people are trying to feel out how much they want to deal with Xavier and Krakoa, right? So the Krakoan dignitaries that went to this economic council, and I don't know why you do this, Xavier, Magneto, Apocalypse.
Yeah. That's a scary trio.
Yeah, what could go wrong? But they did not go alone. They took personal security with them.
Why?
Because you still need to be able to talk to these people without overtly focusing on outside forces. However, they didn't have to focus on much, because the personal security they took with them only consisted of 2 people.
Cyclops and Wolverine?
Close? Cyclops and Gorgon.
Who's Gorgon?
Gorgon is the Japanese man that Wolverine has had a long-standing rivalry with. He is a former leader of Hydra, usually carries a sword. If he looks you with his naked gaze, like without sunglasses or a blindfold, he can turn you to stone.
And Gorgon.
Yeah, and they didn't show up in uniforms. They showed up in suits, and Gorgon was wearing sunglasses. Security said that all security personnel had to wait outside, and of course, Cyclops and Gorgon are not going to argue that. However, they did take umbrage with the fact that Gorgon was carrying a sword, because while the security is allowed to be armed, it's not supposed to be overt, to which Gorgon's response was something akin to Brock Sampson saying, "Go ahead, soldier, take it from me." And Cyclops basically made him promise to behave. But what we found out was that somebody planted 2 tactical teams in the building, on the floors above and below the Economic Council. And the only reason they found it out was because Xavier sensed one of them because he kept scratching at the psychic dampeners that were on the side of his head. It was loose just long enough for him to get an image. So Cyclops and Gorgon split up, each took a floor. And while they were in conversation, Cyclops ran into trouble. He was disabling most of them, but somebody nearly got the drop on him. When he psychically asked for help, that's when Magneto just suddenly kind of waved his fork while he was talking, and you notice that his powers are flaring. He yanked that rifle right out of the soldier's hand.
Nice.
Yoink.
Yeah. Several other things we found out from this issue, and this is where it gets deep. Number 1, Magneto was arguing that humans always have trouble adapting to a new age. It's like after the Bronze Age, we have the Dark Ages, when a lot of history was lost, simply because humans adapted very poorly to it. And when somebody in the room decided to ask, well, what exactly do you think ended the Bronze Age? And that's when Apocalypse, while mid-chew, just said, "Oh, I did."
Huh.
I get the feeling this is a story for another time.
He's not joking, is he?
Does he
No.
ever? I've never heard of him
Casual
make a
about it.
joke. I've never even heard him make a pun.
Admittedly, this would be the kind of joke that would be to his sensibilities.
Like I said, I've never seen him make a joke, so I don't know. I've read 5 issues of Excalibur, and he's spoken to everybody very matter-of-factly. When Jubilee was saying somebody needs to take care of Shogo while they go through the portal, it wasn't Apocalypse standing around going, "Well, I'm your Huckleberry." He just said, "Give me the baby."
Mm-hmm.
But either way, that was actually not the end of the weird revelations in this issue. We actually found out what Krakoan's overall goal is.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, so several people in the council took umbrage with the weird pharmaceuticals that Xavier's putting out. You know, obviously he didn't ask a whole lot of world bodies before he just announced we're putting out all this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a specific reason why they did that. Not only is it a mutant product and they control the profits from that mutant product, but what they're doing is they're amassing fortunes. They're doing it so that they can play the game better than humans. And what Magneto explained is that they're getting that money so that they can buy influence, so they can buy the bribable politicians, so that they can flood the world with more money than the people who are looking to destroy them, and then simply sit back and wait for humans to either change and accept this idea of cohabitation, or just plain get eventually replaced as mutants populate the Earth.
Wow.
They are literally looking to do human politics better than humans. And even Apocalypse and Magneto admitted in that conversation their ways were not working. They think this one can, because they've seen people with worse attitudes than them succeed at it. And that's one of those stories that when I read that 5 issues in, I'm like, okay, now you've revealed your hand, and dear God, this argument makes too much sense. What do you guys think? Because I read that and I'm just like, wow.
That's...
It's a lot to take in, I admit.
Yeah. Still wrapping my head around that.
So, I was kind of floored when I read that. Now we actually know what the mission is and what the X-Men are trying to both create and defend. It's not just an island nation. They're creating a society. A global society, no less. I'll be intrigued to see if it works. Because if there's one thing human history has given us, is that no empire is constant.
True. Or steady or stable.
Mm-hmm. You know, they've already had a semi-successful assassination of Xavier on the island, as well as an infiltration by a group of old women who just really know plants. Next up, we have DC Comic News. This is where we talk about the other major company in comics and what storylines and characters they have coming now and in the near future. Unfortunately, we have to start some DC news with a cancellation and a delay. First of all, DC's planned Absolute Edition of Batman Gotham by Gaslight has been canceled.
Really?
Yeah, this is supposed to be a collected edition of one of DC's rather notable Elseworld series versions of Batman. And I really don't know why you suddenly stopped this. You have a new Batman movie, as far as I know, in filming right now. This is a terrible time to cancel this type of reprint.
Yeah. Wonder why.
I don't know. DC did say that it will be solicited again in a different format, but I've heard that about series that have never seen the light of day again. The original plans for the Absolute Edition of Gotham by Gaslight was made back in December, and then solicited for a September 2020 release. The original Gotham by Gaslight miniseries was done by Brian Augustin and Jeff Parker. Art was by Mike Mignola, P. Craig Russell, Eduardo Barreto, Greg Tocchini, and Evan Shaner. Even the cover of this was supposed to be by Mike Mignola. I mean, I think even rather casual comic book fans at this point know who Mignola is.
So is that based on or a continuation of the film?
No, Gotham by Gaslight is an interesting alt-world tale where Batman exists in a steampunk-style version of Gotham.
Right. There's a movie, an animated movie by that same title.
I've actually never seen it. I don't want to say I have an aversion to Batman, but I have regular issues with the quality of DC animated these days.
It's surprisingly good. I was surprised. I had zero expectations watching it.
Mm-hmm.
It was an interesting take.
I may go back and check it out on Hulu. I've noticed a bank of DC animated stuff on Hulu these days.
I was going to say I wouldn't pay to watch it, but if it was free, I'd watch it.
Well, according to the solicits, this was about Batman against Jack the Ripper in a battle in the skies over Gotham City.
Yep.
There were appearances by the Victorian Dark Knight, including Countdown Special, The Search for Ray Palmer, Gotham by Gaslight #1, and Convergent Shazam #1 and 2. I'm guessing that all of these comic books were times that DC has appeared in Gotham by Gaslight's world. So I don't know what to say about that. I've never actually read Gotham by Gaslight because, again, not a Batman person.
Yeah.
The delay I was talking about, though, actually has to do with Justice League. This has been written by Scott Snyder pretty much since the series restarted with the Rebirth. The art is by Jorge Jimenez. And unfortunately, we found out that the final issue of Snyder and Jimenez's run, issue number 39, has been delayed by 2 weeks. It was originally scheduled to be released on January 15th. Now it's scheduled to go on sale January 29th. And this is the epilogue of the Justice Doom War.
Okay, so not that much of a delay.
Not a serious one, but it still points to an overall problem with DC. I mean, we cover the news, and I try to keep it to just hard news. No fan theories, no suppositional stuff, just no rumors. Just hard news. Yet when we cover DC's schedule, it seems like every other week we hear about some kind of weird delay in one of their series, whereas Marvel either isn't talking about it or just doesn't have any. It does lead me to question what's going on with DC's editorial.
Don't know.
What did you all think of the first few issues of Batman White Knight?
Meh.
I can hand this off to someone, not my speed, but it's really well written.
Okay. I ask because it seems that the writer and artist of that series, Sean Gordon Murphy, is working on something else, possibly in that universe. On Twitter this week, actually today, he released a cover for something he's doing with Blake Northcott, but he wouldn't give details. However, it is the first time he's ever drawn Catwoman.
Oh.
And he said in the tweet, quote, "This is the first time I've ever drawn her, so I went with my own twist on the animated series Grey Suit. Whisker marks on her mask. Yes, please?" Unquote. So I would like to know...
I feel like they could be done well, but whisker marks on a mask just sound like they're going to be a bunch of parallel lines.
Well, they pretty much are. Wolverine had some in his very first appearance back when he was human. Incredible Hulk 181. He didn't start out a mutant. He started out as a special agent. But actually, it's not as egregious as you would think if you take a look. I linked you the image he posted online.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's not a case where he glued cheap whiskers onto Catwoman's mask. It's just a few lines to mimic whiskers on the cowl itself.
Okay, that's not bad.
You could have gone on the 66 route and actually put whiskers on it.
Yeah, I think even he only has so much room for cheese. I would like to know what this is, though. I don't know if this is like a White Knight version of Catwoman on her own adventure, or if they're working on some other type of Elseworlds type of tale. Maybe it's Black Label stuff. I'd like
the architecture is weird, and she's got little pouches and baubles on her belt.
Yeah, her belt from the animated series was like not a jewel belt, but just one of those gold chain belts similar to what Black Widow was wearing back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what to say about that. I'm looking at the background of the image, though, with the drones that appear to be using spotlights, possibly a moon in the background, and the architecture. I'm starting to wonder if this could possibly be the White Knight version of Santa Prisca.
Ooh, yeah.
Could be.
I mean, I think Bane was recently killed in the Curse of the White Knight, but that doesn't mean the country wouldn't still be there.
Uh-huh.
Or that he could still be producing the venom that he used.
Well, there's also a chance that this could be some kind of prequel series, and this is before Bane left Santa Prisca.
Also valid.
I don't know.
I'm curious who this other person here is with the spear is.
The child with the panther? I don't know. I mean, first instinct is Kamandi the Lost Boy, but this one looks too modern for that. I will say, though, that based on what I've read and the ideas that he comes out with, Sean Murphy's earned my... he's earned, like, my faith buys. I would be willing to pick this up just to see what he's working on. Especially since he helped redesign Barbara Gordon's costume in DC Canon. I really enjoy that design. Justice League Dark, in recent issues, it turns out one of the members of the Justice League may be the next thing to threaten the entire world. I know, you're asking which one could it possibly be this time. And it's not Aquaman. How familiar are you with the entity known as Naboo?
First I've heard of that name.
Is it?
I think it is.
Okay. Naboo is the entity inside the helmet of Dr. Fate.
Oh, never mind.
Evidently, Naboo, in recent issues of Justice League Dark, has actually managed to negotiate with, I believe, something called the Other Kind and allow them to operate on the earthly plane. And, I don't know, it's not entirely clear why he's doing this, but he's basically allowing monsters into Earth. Apparently his fear is that the erosion of the source wall in recent stories has allowed the Dark World and Other Kind to come in and corrupting it. And Naboo's plan for dealing with this is the complete elimination of magic. However, the elimination of magic would result in the death and elimination of all magical beings within the DC multiverse.
Including himself.
Potentially. He's a Lord of Order, though, so I don't know if that would mean his destruction or just his ability to operate on this plane.
The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
Evidently, he's being resisted right now by the latest holder of the Dr. Fate helmet. Gosh, who is that right now? Nasur. He's not the first holder of the Dr. Fate helmet. He's the more recent Middle Eastern-born or Middle Eastern-descended gentleman who was using the helmet. I don't know. The idea
appropriate there.
Yeah. There's something kind of fitting about a character named Dr. Fate trying to destroy the world. You know what I mean?
Sounds very Silver Age when you think about that.
Yeah, it does. I'm not sure this is enough to get me to buy Justice League Dark, but I'm intrigued by the idea, at least. Speaking of intrigued by the idea, DC's Dark Trinity is reunited.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yep. The Red Hood, Artemis, and Bazaar are finally in the same place again.
That might be a fun read.
Well, I wouldn't say they're getting along entirely. They're still trying to get used to things. There's still some personal issues for the three of them to work through. However, it does appear that they have their own type of, I don't even know what to call it. They have a bunch of young hero or young potential supervillains that they're trying to stop from becoming supervillains. Right now they're being housed at Ma Gunn's Home for Wayward Boys, where Todd grew up before Bruce Wayne found him.
Huh.
There's several characters here with some rather scary abilities. DC's version of Cloud9, who is an elemental. Character named Devour, who eats metal to turn his body into weapons. DNA, who can turn his body into anything he touches. Sounds a lot like grunge back in the day. Babe in Arms, a genius child with a zombified mother. And Doomed, a Star Labs intern infected with doomsday spores.
Whoa.
Oof.
Of course Star Labs has something to do with it.
Well, I mean, the description sounds like a group of supervillains, and the idea that Jason Todd is trying to make them into better people. Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Wouldn't that be the blind leading the blind? Just saying.
Maybe, but you gotta admit, Todd is doing pretty well on his own now that he's gotten away from Bruce Wayne's rules. The guy needs structure, and Wayne's life is a little too chaotic for that.
So he runs the Iceberg Lounge instead.
He used to. It sounds like that's done. I think he's gotten all these people away from the people he stole the Iceberg Lounge for. And I guess that's the other thing you gotta admit. At least Todd has something of a plan rather than just beat up bad guys. He has a purpose. Goodness knows
that's good.
Well, he couldn't do any worse in leading children. I mean, how many has Bruce Wayne gotten killed?
Yeah, that's always going to be too soon to mention.
At least give the guy a chance.
Still kind of like the blind leading the blind.
A bit, but at least they're working from the same position. They want to be better people.
Mm-hmm.
Last up in DC comic news, one of my favorite DC villains, if not possibly my favorite of all time, is coming back.
Which one?
Well, let me talk to you first about where he's going to appear. He's going to appear in Shazam number 13. There is not a release date yet on when this is. It's going to be written by Jeff Johns, the artist by Dale Eaglesham. Now, you know who Shazam is, the young child who says the magic word, and he's endowed with the powers of ancient gods, and becomes a hero pretty much on par with Superman, if not possibly surpassing him, simply because Shazam's powers are magic fueled, and that is one of Superman's primary weaknesses. So, whether or not he can beat Superman, I will leave that up to whoever is writing it, because that could always shift. And of course, he can always share his powers with others and create other beings about as strong as he is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who do you think in the DC pantheon of villains could take him on directly?
Doomsday?
I like the guess, but no, that's a bit over his head, admittedly.
I mean...
He's got the power, but he doesn't have the mind. He is a kid, after all.
Right, but, kids are squirrely and tricky. They fight dirty and they think outside the box.
Well, I'll give you one hint. This cover shows this villain standing in front of the bodies of two of the Shazam family, apparently knocked out.
Oh.
And this person doesn't look like they took any damage in the fight.
Lobo?
I like that
Would that
guess
still be
too,
way
but that
too
would be
OP?
kind of dirty fighting.
Yeah, well...
What about you, Jesse? You got any guesses as to who this
villains.
who could this be?
I have guesses of powerful villains, but I'm not sure you like these characters.
Well, give me one and I'll tell you if it is.
Zod?
That is an interesting guess, but no, it is not Zod. However, you're in the right pantheon. I'll give you one more.
The Tallow?
Again, good guess, but no. This villain's name is Clark Kent.
Wait, what?
Hold on.
That was misleading.
It's not misleading because his name is Clark Kent. But to comic book fans, he's more colloquially known as Superboy Prime.
Oh, crap.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Now, Superboy Prime has not been seen for a while. For those that don't know, Superboy Prime comes from what they call Earth Zero. It's not Earth Prime. It is a world where this kid, Clark Kent, has been reading comic books in his basement and somehow has become the lone superpowered character from his universe. There are no other heroes. And after a few adventures and being stuck outside time in Crisis on Infinite Earths, he reappeared in, I believe it was Infinite Crisis. No, it wasn't Infinite Crisis. It was named something else. I'm sorry, I forget. But he basically wanted to forcibly recreate his world and his existence by destroying other dimensions with the help of Alexander Luthor from Earth 3, I believe. That did not work out well. He had a bit of a psychotic break. He was stuck in the regular DC universe, given armor that looks that kind of emulates the Anti-Monitor. May have actually been pieces of his armor recrafted onto Superboy that was enhanced by the scientists of the Antimatter universe working for Sinestro. It augmented his abilities.
That sounds like a bad combination.
It is. The kid is murderous. He wants his way no matter what. Last I heard, he was shunted back to Earth Zero, but I think they stole all of his powers. I think they undid that somehow. And he's been lost, as far as I know, ever since the Rebirth. I haven't heard of where he's been. But since most of DC's history, pre-Rebirth, has been restored, it looks like he's back on the table. And when you think about it, it's almost perfect. A marauding Superboy, an enhanced Superboy beating up on Shazam, there's something almost poetic about that.
Or like OP Schoolyard Rumble.
Yes. That's why I'm kind of looking forward to this story. I'm not much of a Shazam fan, but I would like to read this just to see how it shakes loose.
Sounds interesting.
So it is almost like an evil flip side coin of Shazam at this point. Instead of being the boy who has the form of a man, you've got the man with the mind of a boy.
Interesting just juxtaposition.
I think so. I look forward to seeing what comes next on it. You know what, before we get into the last group of news here, can I acknowledge one sci-fi creator who died a couple weeks ago?
Sure.
Have you ever heard the name Sid Mead?
No.
Okay, this guy is actually responsible for more of sci-fi than I care to admit. He was an artist and designer. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He worked on films that included Blade Runner, Tron, and Aliens.
Oh, wow.
He died early on December 30th at the age of 86. If you want to know more specifically, what did he work on and what makes him so special? He designed a lot of different aesthetics and architecture for different movies. He designed the spinner from Blade Runner, the vehicle that Harrison Ford drove. He designed the light cycles in the original Tron film. He designed the robot Johnny Five in Short Circuit.
Really?
I remember that one.
He helped design the power loader from Aliens. And all of these things, if they weren't directly designed by Mead, he heavily influenced their designs. He was born in Minnesota back in 1933. God, that seems like so long ago now. He served 3 years in the U.S. Army before being recruited by the Ford Motor Company to help their design team. And then by 1970, he made his own company, Sid Mead Incorporated. They worked on industrial design and architecture before they transferred into film. His first major creation for movies? V'ger from Star Trek The Motion Picture.
Really? Whoa.
Mm-hmm. He assisted Ridley Scott directly on the world of Blade Runner, including a lot of the vehicles. He did the same thing on Tron. He consulted on Johnny Five and Short Circuit. He helped design the Sulaco ship in Aliens. He even more recently worked on the Elysium film and Tomorrowland, and he was helping Ridley Scott again on Blade Runner 2049.
Wow.
So that's one of those names I've never heard before, and I'm sad I haven't. This guy pretty much shaped our lives of sci-fi.
Seriously, like everything.
Mm-hmm. Just about anything technical within it looks like he had a hand within it. Now, I'm sad to learn this now.
Yeah.
But, it's important to know who creates things, not just to give them proper credit, but to understand that when we lose certain people, we may lose doors to certain parts of entertainment.
Definitely.
Now, last up is our general comic and convention news. This is where we talk about comic books that are not Marvel or DC related, as well as conventions happening all around the world. I don't have any convention news this week. However, it has been announced that there is a woman teaching a making comics course at Chicago's DePaul University. It's being taught by adjunct professor and cartoonist Bianca Zunis. According to the course description, quote, "This course introduces students to the components of graphic narrative, including superhero and alternative comics, comic strips, manga, and graphic novels. Students will learn fundamental materials and techniques, including penciling and inking, digital painting and coloring, publishing, and create their own graphic narratives. The course will also provide an overview of the history of comics and graphic storytelling, and their relation and importance to the art of animation," unquote.
Wow.
Zunis herself is a Chicago-based cartoonist best known for work on The Nib and in Shondaland. In 2018, she was given an Ignatz Award for Promising New Talent, and she has a BFA in graphic design from the University of Illinois. She previously taught this course at DePaul University from 2015 to 2018. Oh no, I'm sorry. This course was offered in 2015 to 2018, and it was taught by Aaron Rainier. If you have an interest in comics, that sounds like almost a vital course to take.
Sounds like it'd be fascinating.
I think so. It occurred to me by talking through the description. I mean, you learn the process of making comics, regardless of your level of talent at it. However, this sounds like the kind of course that editors should take as well.
For sure.
You're learning the ins and outs of comic book making. This seems like a vital thing for an editor to understand. If I was younger, I'd consider it. Mark Millar is teasing that he's working on a 10-part spin-off to his and Frank Quietly's Jupiter Legacy, and they may be calling it Jupiter Requiem. Millar himself posted about it on Twitter, including an image of his apparent laptop that has the screen of it that says Jupiter's Requiem issue 1 of 10. It looks like he's working on it directly. And the script also omits the artist of the series, and says on it, "Unless you know someone named Top Secret." The first panel's description on the laptop reads, quote, "Open on Earth 50,000 years ago," unquote. So it's possible Jupiter's Requiem is a prequel to the Jupiter's Legacy series.
interesting.
This is kind of notable because Millar's not known to do many sequels to his series. He typically does a story and he moves on. He's almost like a manga writer. I wish he would do a sequel to the Magic Order. I've been wanting more of that universe. Also, Valiant is teasing a noir mystery series in its books. This one they're calling The Final Witness. According to Sci-Fi Wire, this series is going to be about 4 main characters who are brought together to solve a murder in San Francisco. They will be a detective, an investigative journalist, an arsonist, and a new superhero who has connections to a villainous figure. It's going to start out as a 5-issue miniseries with potential to expand. The writers and artists of this series, for some reason, are being kept mysteries. The editor will be Heather Antos. She's going to oversee the project. And according to Miss Antos, the moment she came up with a series idea, she knew who she wanted writing and drawing it. She said, quote, "I wanted someone who had a strong understanding of pacing and tension, which make murder mysteries work, and we want the art to capture that gritty, real-world vibe. If you're a fan of the stories that happen in Gotham, then you'll be interested in what we're doing here," unquote.
Nice.
See a lot of mysteries in DC anymore. Not on a scale that would.
I suppose not, now that you mention it. I know that characters investigate individual things, but there aren't really any big mysteries left in DC's writing these days. I hadn't thought about it.
Yeah, that's why I still feel like Batman is probably best there when he's actually being the detective and not being a superhero.
Well, I guess the problem is they are investigating mysteries, but they're not mysteries to the reader. The reader often sees both sides. You know, the hero chasing the villain and what they're doing next, instead of being left any surprises.
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of subjective. Last up in general comic news, we have to go back to Boom Studios for something called Necessary Evil.
Oh.
Not familiar with this?
Sounds really familiar.
Well, I'm kind of disappointed with you. Necessary Evil, according to Boom Studios, will be the follow-up to the Shattered Grid event in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah, my husband's been talking about that. I haven't read it.
It's being written by Ryan Perot. The art is by Danielle DiNiculo, color by Walter Baltimore, and letter by Ed Dukeshire. This is supposed to begin in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 47, which is scheduled to go on sale January 22nd, just a couple weeks away. And this is kind of important because this event will have a first ever for the Power Rangers as a whole. The current Mighty Morphin team, all 5 Rangers plus a White Ranger, they're going to team up with the Omega Rangers.
That's going to be fun. I'm going to have to now catch up.
This is going to be an 11-issue event, too, so this is going to occur over most of a year.
Mm-hmm.
And you do remember who the Omega Rangers are, right?
Yep.
Zach, Trini, and Jason, actually in these outfits for the first time ever in all of Power Rangers history. I admit to some curiosity about this. I would like to know what the Omega Rangers do. I have only seen small images of the characters in their outfits, but not what they're capable of. And I've seen half of an image that appears to be Zach as the Black Omega Ranger carrying a couple of hand sickles.
Interesting.
This seems like a very un-Ranger weapon.
Mm.
Well, I'm concerned this previous one was an axe, and that was kind of brutal.
Yeah, I suppose so. Our subject of the week is Young Justice, issues 1 through 6. This is the latest version of the teenage superheroes in DC Comics. The story's by Brian Michael Bendis. The art shifts around a lot, but the first issue is by Patrick Gleason. The colors are by Alejandro Sanchez, and the letters are by DC's Lettering. This is an upgrade to a series that has not existed in DC canon for about almost 20 years, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I read the original run of Young Justice. It happened while I was living in a town in California known as Merced. Now, I read the original run when some of their members were like Amazonas and Arrowette and Secret, who turned out to be an apocalyptin. I don't know. I don't think I can ever explain that adequately. But it's an upgrade, not an upgrade, just an update to the series, as well as involving one character that's a classic in DC canon and 2 brand new ones. This team comprises of Connor Kent, Superboy, a.k.a. Match, Wonder Girl Cassie Sandsmark, Impulse Bart Allen, Tim Drake as Robin, for now, longtime DC character Amethyst, and 2 brand new characters, Teen Lantern and Ginny Hex.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, my first impressions of the series are that I like the concept, but I'm not wowed on the execution.
Really?
Yeah, we've read Brian Michael Bendis' other DC project in Wonder Comics imprint, Naomi, and that blew me away. I thought it was great, like heartfelt storytelling combined with incredible art and a nice beginning to everything going on. I don't know why, but it almost felt like the readers were never quite caught up as to what's going on in the first 6 issues of Young Justice.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt like everything was on even footing, and it often felt like the newer characters were almost purposefully underserved compared to the long-standing Young Justice members. And I know part of that is a problem with balance. We just don't know who they are. But I found myself more interested in who they are versus what the others were up to.
So, I like this better than the West Coast Avengers, even
Mhm.
though it's kind of a similar team with, adolescents kind of doing their thing, not really knowing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that their personalities contrast way better. Like, they play off of each other better.
Okay.
Like the overly seriousness of Superboy and the really, really not serious, not focusing, not structured of Kid Flash, was it?
Impulse.
Impulse. Oh yeah. Okay. Kind of played off of each other's complete opposites.
That was kind of the dynamic in the initial series too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I never read the initial, so that was kind of fun though.
It was kind of weird that it seemed like just about all this, the 6 issues happened in Amethyst's backyard in this realm called Gem World. But she felt like an afterthought throughout a lot of it.
Yeah, I feel like you could have taken her out of most scenes and it wouldn't have affected the scenes. And that to me is annoying for any characters, but especially for women characters.
I mean,
because it's
the only thing that you really
male
needed for her in the
protagonist.
series was the flying horse.
The Pegasus.
Yeah, everything else, she was just there for exposition, unfortunately.
Mm.
And I'm kind of mixed on that, only because Amethyst feels like a very old idea. She is the girl who was displaced to this other world and became a princess of power, and it feels like this character was created to coincide with, like, She-Ra back in the day.
Yeah, very She-Ra-esque. What is the other one? There was She-Ra, and there was like another series.
Gem and the Holograms?
Was it that? No, I thought there were more.
There was a few princess stories back in the day, but when Amethyst was created in the 80s, that's pretty much all girls had to look up to as far as female superheroes. You know, magical princesses of one sort or another. Whether they be humans or horses, really.
Okay.
I mean, the first issue itself, the first couple pages were in Gem World, except they never really explained anything about that. All you really see is 2 characters meeting each other, and there's not much context behind it, unless, I guess, you're a long-term DC reader. But then all of a sudden it flashes over to Metropolis as somebody in a very old truck is getting pulled over. And did anyone else notice the Transformers Easter egg on that page?
No.
Take a good look on that page 10 of what we had here. It was the first page of Metropolis as the truck's being pulled over. There's a car silhouette in blue right next to it. Yeah. You miss That's Hot Rod, isn't it?
That.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Somebody had a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
But the young girl being pulled over is too young to have a license, and it's still not clear how she got her father's truck.
Mothers, I believe.
Her mother died, but I thought it was her father's truck.
I don't think that was ever explained.
No, I don't think it was either.
The whole thing is odd. She's definitely one of those fish out of water tales, since she's trying to explain that everyone where she comes from has a shotgun in the truck.
It must be Texas.
Oh, it has to be.
Exactly. No,
Says the
that
woman in Texas.
she said she
She's from something Falls, Texas.
yeah, something Texas. Yeah.
Is it Wichita Falls?
No, it didn't sound like a
No.
real place.
Yeah,
Okay.
it sounded like a fictional thing.
Oh, okay.
It
Sorry.
seems like most heroes in DC are not from actual cities. They're from made-up places within the world.
Which is funny because they mentioned Jacksonville, Florida later. I was like, huh?
And since she's been pulled over in Metropolis, it doesn't take long for something unusual to happen. That's kind of a given here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why Metropolis is in so much better shape than Gotham, because it seems like way weirder things happen here. But it's kind of funny how everyone's response is like an old Powerpuff Girls cartoon. Everyone just starts yelling for Superman because he'll hear it.
Help, Superman! It works before.
You know, Ginny's response is that she's just pointing a shotgun at these things, realizing how weird her day is. And that's when Robin shows up.
One of them.
She could be using a bow and arrow.
Who cares about the bow and arrow? I mean, a Robin showed up in Metropolis. Has the world ended?
I was gonna say Jonah Hex usually uses rifles and shotguns.
I thought he typically used pistols.
Six-shooter, Colt
He had
revolvers.
a rifle too.
Yeah, he had a rifle. He was like full on, Western loadout.
Okay. But after Robin shows up is when we're treated to a small flashback of Tim Drake and Cassie Sandsmark meeting in Metropolis for unknown reasons, as Superman is flying away somewhere at high speed. And I guess it was just a coincidence. The two of them are in town for different reasons that are just not clear at all.
Which never gets resolved, does it?
It's never entirely explained. We find out why Robin is on his own for a little while. Well, I guess I should keep calling him Tim Drake just so he's recognizable. But not why Cassie Sandsmark is in town for any real reason. And just like Cassie, we don't know why Tim Drake is in this particular place. It's just high coincidence, I guess?
Because plot dictates it.
Yeah, I suppose. But when several local Metropolis police are surrounded by these strange mythical things surrounding them, three of them are whisked away to a local park by Impulse. Now, he's one of the few characters I could believe would hear about something randomly and just show up. Because of a combination of his speed and just his lack of impulse control.
And this is where he kind of knows the first shift in artists.
Yeah, it does seem like a second artist was brought in here at this point. But then it moved back quickly. Maybe somebody filled in for a couple pages. But since we saw the flashback that Cassie Sandsmark is in town, obviously it wouldn't take long for her to get involved. The question is, why is she so apprehensive about it? She purposefully took a while to actually pull down her hood, show her bracelets, and get involved in the fight. Parts of that are explained in this 3 issues, or in this 6 issues, but not all of it, in my opinion. But this is when things get really weird, because while Ginny is getting ready to break into a trunk in the back of her truck for some reason, is when Cassie is caught out of the sky after a bad hit by something that looks like a green version of the ED-209 from RoboCop. And it just introduces itself as Teen Lantern, and they're new. And this is crazy. But Ginny, while she's going through the trunk, she pulls out a laser blaster. It looks like something from Adam Strange.
Yeah. It's very, very out of the ordinary.
It's very much pulp sci-fi. But this blaster is highly effective. You got to give her credit. She at least pulled the right object. And before they can really understand what these things want and what to do about them is when they're accidentally sucked through the vortex they escape through, and they're split up. And Robin finds himself under the sword of Amethyst, of all people, because she wants to know what he's doing in her house. It almost felt like there was another art shift at this moment, because Amethyst looks like she's brooding in this one.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's the right place for him to drop. If you're going to run into the brooding house of a weird superhero, Tim Drake's one of the first people you want in there. He knows what that feels like.
Yeah, fair point.
But wherever Impulse ends up, he finds himself soon hanging out with Connor Kent. I had a few problems with the way Connor was portrayed in his flashback issue, for lack of a better term. The art in the
what he was doing, or the style?
We'll get into that in a little bit. The second issue, the Forest of Topaz, is where Ginny Hex landed in her truck with the Teen Lantern mech on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And she looks appropriately bewildered. Her truck's in the middle of a forest where it used to be in a modern city, and there is something huge laying on top of it that she can't identify. But even though she had been fighting against mythical monsters with this thing not too long ago, her first response when she can't get it to move right away is to grab her shotgun and threaten it. Short-term memory doesn't seem to be her thing.
No,
I
but
think it's more impatience.
yeah.
But Cassie tells her not to do that. She comes wandering out of the woods. Looks like she landed not too far away. I did like the conversation between Ginny and Cassie, because Ginny has no idea who Cassie is. Like, not one. She knows who Superboy is. She knows who several members of the Teen Titans, including Beast Boy, is. Cassie Sandsmark? Wonder Girl? This is just not familiar to her at all. This almost feels like the perfect summation of Cassie Sandsmark history in DC. She gets involved in a lot of stuff, but no one seems to remember she was ever there. And most of issue 2 is a flashback issue dealing with Cassie and what she's doing in... What is this, Kansas? No, Jacksonville, Florida. Sorry.
Yep.
She's fighting Despero in Jacksonville, Florida. There's something...
It's really random.
I know. I'm almost expecting a Florida Man headline somewhere in the middle of all this.
It's also random reading Jacksonville, Florida. It, like, jumped out on the page just where I was born. I was like, oh man, what's going on in Jacksonville now?
I know, but this feels like somebody else should be involved somehow. And this is one of the larger problems I have with DC continuity. A lot of their primary characters are so powerful and so all-encompassing, and practically have a global impact, that it seems like Despero, this creature from outer space, which has intense mind control powers and has regularly harassed the Justice League, is fighting a teenage superhero by herself in Jacksonville, Florida, and nobody seems to know about it.
Well, he is oceanic, and it is on the coast.
Is he oceanic? I thought he was just space.
Oh, he looks like he has fins.
No, as far as I know, Despero is like a celestial being of some sort.
And Fins was always kind of a thing. It's like, okay, this thing's otherworldly and not human.
Mm-hmm.
Then heck if I know. It could have been swimming. He
I used
could
to
be on
get-
vacation.
Yeah, I used to get Despero mixed up with Eclipso for a while. It took me a while to learn the differences between the two as a child.
Mm-hmm.
The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
But the more interesting part in this was that Cassie ends up running into an old man who keeps calling himself her grandpa. And if you don't know, Cassie as Wonder Girl is not anything close to Diana. Well, actually, I guess now she is. Wonder Woman was retconned to be a descendant of the gods herself. A descendant of Zeus. So technically, I guess Cassie's her cousin. Because Zeus is her grandfather.
Interesting.
That's been known for a while. Cassie's powers are heavenly divined.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, Zeus wants to give her an amulet that will round out the bracers and lasso she already has and turn her into the protector of Olympus. Which itself is an interesting question because, as Cassie herself argues, why? I haven't done anything to earn this.
Mm-hmm.
But Zeus keeps insisting that she take it.
So to me, this felt like a trap. Namely, because I would never trust Zeus. If you've read any mythology, you would understand my stance.
Well, that's
Yeah, no.
I'm not sensing that this is a trap necessarily. I think he wants her for something. And he does
It's a
want her...
shackle. It is a not a trap, but a prison.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think he wants her to help protect him from something that he's not talking about. Because...
Yeah, something he can't handle himself.
Yeah.
And whereas he's handing her not this favor, but this task, a responsibility, and she's like, "Why? I haven't earned this favor or this thing."
Yeah, I don't think
And
it's a
he's
trap.
like, "No, just take it."
Yeah, I don't think it's a trap. I think it's something he wants, and I think it's something where I think he hopes that if her powers are fully unlocked, she will be so grateful she will stay with him.
But he seems to be out. It feels like he's kind of it for himself.
Well, that's what I mean. He wants her powers
Well,
unlocked
it's
so she can do
Zeus.
something else for him. The question is what?
I think the only person that might rival Zeus's manipulation in the comics would be like Professor X.
Mm,
I have strong feelings about Zeus, but anyway.
well, I'm not saying he's doing anything altruistic here. He wants something from her.
Yes.
Mhm.
And he wants her very strong to be able to handle whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but she just outright declines it. She doesn't even keep it in her pocket as something for later. But
Yeah, and I think he's angry that she's just dismissive and doesn't understand. He seems desperate and too stubborn to admit that he needs something.
well, maybe he knew about something that was coming, because it just occurs to me that this is not long before the Year of the Villain event, where I believe he and a couple other of the Pantheon were killed by Cheetah and the Godkiller sword.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe he had a better idea as to what was coming than anybody else did. But, as you said, Zeus is not one of those to ask for help. He's more likely to just say, come with me, rather than say, I need you for something. That's very much within Zeus's sphere, as in both DC and within mythology. Let me see. We flash back to the present, and Cassie is not telling anybody about what she's experienced with her grandfather. However, I'm surprised she didn't crush the roof of this truck as she attempted to fly it with Teen Lantern following behind them.
Yeah, just that some physics are not making sense here.
Not entirely, no. But then again, with Cassie being a demigod, some of her powers may be a little bit off compared to what we're used to. I mean, hell, for a while in DC, what was it? Superman was both telekinetic and telepathic. The more you know, right?
Yep.
But anyway, they accidentally collide with Tim Drake, who's riding Amethyst's Pegasus, because she herself can fly. And I have to ask, if the Pegasus collided with the truck, why did it knock everyone else for such a loop?
Pegasus is more powerful than the truck.
Well, not to sound cruel, but if Wonder Girl's got this thing, and it only takes her fingertips, evidently, to make it fly, it seems like hitting a horse wouldn't be that much of a bother to her. And then there's Amethyst, who was flying next to it, who looks like she was hitting a shockwave of something. But thankfully everyone...
Plot.
Yeah. Thankfully everyone's okay, because Teen Lantern formed a bunch of green construct pillows to catch everybody. The more you see of Teen Lantern's abilities, the more young you realize she is.
Yeah, and one of them was a baseball mitt.
Yeah.
No, Hal Jordan did that.
Well, Hal Jordan did drinking, too.
Yeah, well, he's also one of the more immature heroes.
Yeah. And at the end of this issue, we're evidently introduced to the villain of this particular story, Lord Opal of Gemworld, who looks like an emo, narcissistic vampire.
Yep, that sounds about right.
Issue 3 primarily had to do with how Connor found himself here. The short version, according to the flashback, is that Connor apparently was enjoying his life pretty well as Superboy for quite a while, including helping out Star Labs in their New Mexico facility, punching out a monster that reminds me a lot of something from Gen 13, but that's not for here or there. And it looks like Connor always felt like he was a little bit out of place in school, which is kind of easy to understand when you've lived most of your life knowing that you're a clone of Superman and Lex Luthor and have all kinds of massive abilities to help people with.
Mm-hmm.
But Superboy returned to Star Labs when he seemed to realize that they were also incarcerating a lot of aliens and probably stealing their technology while they were at it. But as he was punching his way through the Star Labs facility, being called a brat by the director, yeah, that's going to help with somebody that hits like that.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
He evidently broke a chamber that seems to have a lot of Gemworld artifacts in it that accidentally flung him to Gemworld itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the primary questions I have is, you see the outfit Superboy's in. It's in the classic one that we know from the Young Justice animated. T-shirt, jeans.
Yeah.
You know, also the one he was wearing the first time he was a Teen Titan.
Mm-hmm.
If this is the outfit he landed in, why is he in an outfit that so closely resembles his match outfit in the current times? That seems like a really purposeful thing to build.
Match outfit.
Yeah, Match was one of the first superhero names he went by after he stopped being Superboy.
Well, the outfit I see him in now kind of reminds me of his look back in the 90s.
Yeah. He wore this outfit as Match, too. I use the word match because it's easier to disseminate between that and his Superboy looks.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, if he landed in all this other stuff that was a completely different outfit, did he just spend all of his time building himself a new match costume?
Maybe it was just underneath his regular clothing.
I suppose. But as he's being harassed by, I don't want to say warlords, just people working in Gemworld, another woman shows up with a baby in tow. And Impulse asks who that is, and Superboy introduces that as his wife.
And his child.
Yeah.
Which raises so many
questions.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
we actually named it
Martha.
Yeah.
Martha.
We've had a lot of Martha issues.
Yeah, I don't need more Martha issues.
Too bad you're going to get them because it's DC and they like to beat that dead horse.
Yeah. Meanwhile, as a result of a fight we totally didn't get to see, the rest of these young heroes have been incarcerated in Opal's jails. And apparently these jails have the abilities to stop people from being able to think coherently. That's... I don't know. The dialogue was fun, but this whole inability to think thing, I understand it as a mechanic, I'm just not quite sure it was pulled off here, because everybody seemed to be speaking fine overall, but then there were just these weird little sputters when they were talking specifically about control. I don't know, it almost felt like a writer's convenience type thing.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Issue number 4, that freaky castle at the very beginning that looks like something out of Masters of the Universe.
Yep.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, the comparisons get kind of obvious. And I gotta admit, on this issue, it's pretty much all about what Amethyst has been up to prior to Young Justice landing in Gemworld. And I almost completely checked out here.
Mm-hmm.
It is it's almost entirely about Gemworld politics.
Yep.
And I don't want to say it was hard to follow, but it just wasn't terribly interesting.
Yeah, and
I followed it well enough that they are all stuck in their own ways.
Joanna,
they don't want to change.
We don't see enough of the other world to care enough about them or their politics, I feel.
I think
and also,
so.
There's not like this sense of urgency, like why I'm not compelled to care about them.
Yeah. Yeah, when it flashes over to Superboy still dealing with the people on his family farm, which is still an odd thing to say. And he pretty much ends the whole thing with one punch. An armored knight comes straight at him, and he hits him hard enough to blow apart his armor.
He was being very nice.
He was. Wrecked everything but his helmet and his boxer briefs. It's almost impressive, though, that scene where as the others are picking him up, Connor looks at them all and just says, "Take him and go. Forget this place." That was actually pretty impressive.
It was. That's a lot of restraint.
Not just restrained, it was a good character moment.
Mm-hmm.
So was Bart being so excited afterwards that he just kept running circles around Connor telling him how awesome he is.
Very canon.
Oh, and also adding, you don't get to make the questions until you tell me where babies come from.
I was like, oh no, we're not going to get into this.
Yeah.
Okay, well tell me where that one came from.
Ah, God. So, things are not looking good for the rest of Young Justice in in Opal's castle, and one of Opal's guards decides to go through Ginny Hex's truck. And of course, he finds this weird chest that Ginny's been very, very defensive about since this series began. And when he opened it, I don't even know what to describe or how to describe what came out of it. It looks like the tentacles of various monsters grabbing everything in sight.
Call it Pandora's box and leave it at that.
I think that's what it is, isn't it?
I don't know. I think there's another Easter egg in here, though, because as I look at the panel in the upper left, you see that thing that looks like a kind of a barbed arm with a hook at the end?
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me of the monsters from Howard the Duck.
Do you think that might be intentional?
I don't know. The artist seems to enjoy just putting all kinds of weird random stuff in the background, it seems like.
Well, to say it's called Pandora's box is not right, because that's where Jenny pulled those ray guns from.
Yeah, there's something obviously weird about this thing.
It's like a miniature room of requirement. It's anything you need it to be.
Well, before Young Justice can ruminate too much about the chest, and they still don't know what's happening there, Connor Kent shows up. He breaks everybody out of their individual prisons, which allows them to use their abilities again. So this is the first time the 7 people on the first cover are actually united in one way, or in some way. And again, we go a bit through the politics of Gem World and what happened in the moments before Robin landed in her house. And again, I didn't find it terribly interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of slow going.
It's almost disappointing that at the beginning of the 5th issue here, we start with all of Young Justice standing over the bodies of several guards. Like they actually fought their way through something that, again, we did not see.
That would have been great to see some action.
It really would have. And it's almost hilarious that after everything that's going on, they're still saving Ginny's truck.
Must save the truck at all costs.
I think Ginny's more concerned with the truck than anyone else.
I'm sure she's concerned with the chest, but the truck is always with them.
Mm-hmm.
And most of this issue is a flashback as to how Tim Drake ended up in this situation. Hanging out outside the Hall of Justice with Stephanie Brown.
Yes.
And it looks like they're having an actual moment of happiness. Tim Drake is not dead anymore from the weird story where Jor-El kept him out of time. Cassie knows he's alive. They're together, but all of a sudden their personal lives kind of break them apart.
Mm-hmm.
Her father, a master criminal, wants to connect with her. Meanwhile, Zatanna shows up because there's some kind of weird... I don't know, someone's been suppressing Tim Drake's memories, which I guess is supposed to be Dr. Manhattan. This is before Doomsday Clock started, I think.
Okay, that would make sense.
So as she's going through his mind, she unlocks several memories, including his memories of his time with the original Young Justice, which I guess he probably hasn't known about since New 52. I know I keep throwing out these phrases that a lot of people may not understand, but DC continuity is bereft with continuity restarts and backups and combinations and mergings and breakdowns, and it is so mind-boggling to keep track of it all. I almost understand why it looks like when Zatanna unlocks these memories, Tim Drake looks like he's about to have a meltdown because he has to parse all this out in his frickin' head.
Welcome to the fandom.
Yeah, none of this is going to make sense in the end. But I almost had to laugh because for some reason Lord Opal is smart enough to have a rock of kryptonite on a chain just to deal with Superboy, which admittedly takes off like the top quarter of power from Young Justice. But while he's taunting them is when Impulse grabs that thing and just takes off.
Yoink.
You almost expect to hear a meep meep sound as he runs away.
I like in one frame he's standing there, and the next frame he's not, and then the following frame,
he's back without the rock.
They're actually having dialogue. He's standing there with this enormous stone, like, oh, this thing that was guarded by that, whatchamacallit?
Yeah.
This was supposed to be hard.
That's one of the reasons why the name of Impulse has always been more fitting to him than the rest, because as soon as you come up with half a plan, oh, I've done that half!
Yeah, impulse control issues.
Yeah. But without this kryptonite rocket, seems like Young Justice has no problem taking care of Opal and his forces. Except Opal somehow has the abilities to rip apart reality?
When did that happen, and how?
I don't know. I get the feeling I don't read enough Amethyst for this to make sense.
I never have, so...
But
Something happened, and it's kind of tied into all the crisis events.
Yeah, but I mean, they just beat up Lord Opal, and then as soon as they beat him up, he's gone or something? His reality warping abilities put them in a different place? I don't quite understand how it works.
May not be something
it was
he can
never
control.
explained.
It may not be something he actually has control over, just as a side effect of his increased power, I guess.
I don't know. I agree with Joanna. It's never adequately explained as to how it works.
No, and I agree, and I'm putting in my summations of what I believe it to be.
You know, issue 5, we get a little bit more about the flashback as to what Superboy did after he landed in this weird world, how he helped a woman who recently lost her husband and claimed that was his wife so that she wasn't harassed by the local militaries and militias. So he's not actually married and the baby's not his. But at the same time, again, he landed here in his Young Justice animated outfit or his Teen Titans outfit, and at some point he decided to build something that looked like his original outfit again. I don't quite know what to make of that. However, we for the first time see Teen Lantern's human form, Kelly Quintela, and she is probably about as young as Bart.
I thought they said she was like 9 or 10.
She claims to be 11.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean she is.
Well,
Bart.
Thanks to subsequent stories, we know what Kelly's history is. She's a tinkerer who found some devices when she was living in Bolivia with a friend of hers. And she hasn't actually hacked a Green Lantern ring, but she's hacked a gauntlet that seems to mimic all their powers. And so far, it doesn't seem to have any battery issues like a Green Lantern ring. However, the gauntlet seems to function a lot like Krona's original gauntlet, which slowly drove him insane. So whether or not this is a problem for the future is TBD.
Right.
Meanwhile, Ginny decides to show them all what she was in Metropolis for. She was trying to drop off this mysterious trunk with somebody who knows how to handle what's inside it. And when she opens it and shows it to the rest of Young Justice, I love their reactions. You know, it's like Teen Lantern asking, is that one of the... Yeah. And is that a real... Yeah. And Tim Drake's just saying,
And
oh...
nobody says anything fully.
Yeah. I like Tim Drake. Oh, I thought that was a myth. And then there's Connor staring down into it. That literally has a label that says, do not touch.
And that makes me think it's actually Pandora's box or some form of it.
It isn't.
Okay.
Before that, after Connor mentions the do not touch label, I like that Bart standing next to him. Oh, I want to touch it.
Of course he does.
But after subsequent issues, I do know what's in that trunk. It is a treasure trove of high-powered devices from across the DC universe that Jonah Hex, her grandfather, had been putting together. It actually has one of the hero dials from Dial H for Hero.
Really?
Yeah, it has a set of weapons from across DC that are very dangerous. So it's almost like Ginny is the most responsible person in this team because she had this box full of things that she could have run rampant with, created her own superhero life. No, she wanted to drop this thing off with somebody who knew better.
Well, they need that kind of stability in the group.
Seriously, they're a bunch of odd people. But yeah, this is where Joanna was talking about. They wanted to figure out how to deal with Lord Opal because he changed reality around them. They have to figure out how to defeat him if they're going to get home. And as Amethyst is talking about this giant opal stone that he has that fuels all of his abilities, all of a sudden they switch panels, and you notice Bart is missing from this gathering of people. As she's still talking about it, how deep it is in the castle, and how difficult it will be to even find it within such a big place. And that's when Bart shows up and says, "Do you mean this?"
3 panels later.
Yeah. Oh, and then it
And
started
the
by this huge
genuine
beast
reaction-
that's unrelenting. It's like, oh, like this was supposed to be hard?
Well,
The genuine reaction of everyone except for her, Amethyst, is like, yeah!
yeah, and I like Amethyst. Did you... This is the thing in the basement with the tentacle guy and the low-hanging... You just took that out of the castle? Well, yeah, super speed.
It's so simple in his head.
Well, he was presented with the solution before he was presented with the total problem. And-
Definitely. He doesn't want to hear the total problem. He's just like, bing, solution.
Or he thinks he can figure out the rest along the way. Give me half of it, I can figure out the rest.
Right.
It seems like it was at this point that the humor in this series really started to come full circle, because as they're coming up with a hasty plan as to how to deal with this, I like Connor's reaction of, well, you guys do what you gotta do. I'm gonna punch a castle in the face.
And they should have had some more levity in the beginning, I think. It would be way more enjoyable and less of a drag.
It probably would have. I mean, I like that Teen Lantern says she can hold the opal while they deal with this, and, you know, Impulse tosses it to her and says, "Hi, I'm Bart. Timber." Bart, Timber? No, Timber. Look behind us. And that's when the castle falls over.
Mm-hmm.
You know, was it Cassie checks on Ginny because this is a very big object and Ginny is pretty squishy compared to everybody else. You know, is everyone okay? Are you asking if I'm okay with a building attacking me or falling down on me? Fair point. So, Opal counterattacks, and the unfortunate thing was, in Opal counterattacks after his castle was knocked down, he was beat shockingly fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Teen Lantern wrapped him up real quick, Amethyst punched him in the face, Superboy punched him in the face, Cassie kicked him in the face, and then Ginny even butted him in the face with one of her laser pistols.
Well, the source of his power was removed from his castle, so
I
he
know.
was in a weakened state. But
I know, but he appeared so impressively, appearing out of a vortex, cape blowing in the wind, 2 hellhounds on chains, and they slapped him. They just pretty much backhanded him until he fell down.
Yeah, and Bart didn't get a chance to hit him. He's like, oh, man.
Yeah. And Connor goes and says goodbye to his adoptive family. I almost feel bad for her. She's not going to have anyone to watch out for her.
And I don't know if anyone else saw this. The shift in the child's eyes was from blue to brown.
I did see that. Maybe he's related to Professor X.
Okay. Or just people in that world are affected by their surroundings. Because his eyes are blue. His Superboy's eyes are blue. The mom's eyes are brown. And he's leaving, they're suddenly brown, or it could just be an editing error.
Maybe it's an editing error. Maybe it's a spell to hide the child's not progeny. Maybe it's to hide the child's genealogy, make it look like him. Maybe it's an editor's error. You know, maybe the kid's got mood eyes. Depending on how happy he is, the browner they get. I don't know. But I'm almost dismayed by the end of this series because the people of Gemworld evidently have the ability to send young Justice home. And Amethyst is going as an escort. But for some reason, the High Council of Gemworld has decided to just kind of drop them in the multiverse.
Yeah, and banish them?
I can understand banishing Amethyst. She's... And I don't say that as a matter of legality, but it's just kind of this council doesn't like her and they've been looking to get rid of her. I get that. But just to purposefully push them all into the multiverse, a bunch of characters so powerful that your despot has just had his face punched in. This seems like not the people to make angry.
Of course not.
Yeah, they have such a high superiority complex. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that they could make their way back or find their way back.
They found their way there. So, given that they were dropped off there, I'd have to assume that there's a doorway somehow. I wouldn't want them to even have the possibility to contemplate that. But, yeah, you know what? Conceptually, I think the series is fine. As far as the overall execution, I'm somewhat disappointed. It's the right story, I just don't think it was the right way. Let me put it that way. Gemworld as a beginning could have been really unique, but we spent almost no time getting to know the world, so them thumping around in there pretty much didn't matter, and then to intersperse just about every issue with flashbacks of different types to let you understand where half these characters have been didn't interest me as much as I thought it would.
Right. And there's no consequences, whether they win or lose.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like, okay, well, they won the day, and then they were sent back out into the multiverse.
Yeah, the story...
What's the consequence?
Right, the story of them tripping through the multiverse is way more interesting. Maybe it could have started there, but, you know, I'm not the writer, and maybe... Yeah, I couldn't say why it started like this. So... Maybe I will check out subsequent issues, but I couldn't say this is something I would seek out more of on my own. It's not one of those things that would end up on my pulse list just because it's an impulse buy. So,
right, yeah.
What do you guys think?
I agree. There's some parts that were amusing, but not every part, and too far and few between.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of reason to care about the outcome of these people.
It's kind of sad considering how much history the central 4 characters here do have.
Oh,
but they dropped them in an unfamiliar place, so they don't have any context there.
Yeah. Jesse?
I agree that a lot of the whole adventures through Gemworld scenes was lacking, but I did find some enjoyment in some of the flashbacks. But yeah, I agree, the flashbacks was a bit excessive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we are cutting away from action that might be exciting, and yeah. I mean, I got a bit of nostalgia for this because I very fondly like this crew of people, and hell, I even like Jenny Hex. I think she's kind of awesome.
Mm-hmm. She's quirky.
Yes.
Well, that's the worst part about it all, is that even individually, a lot of these characters, I'd say just about everybody but Amethyst, there's a lot of merit and a lot of possibility as to storytelling. It's just one of those cases where it didn't feel like they really approached any of the potential of any of these characters within this first arc.
I think each one of them could have their own issue by themselves with just the flashbacks that were presented.
Agreed.
Yeah, it would have made a cleaner story, I'm sure.
Yes.
It's kind of scattered in everywhere.
So, I mean, I'd like to give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. I'm just kind of right in the middle on it. It's close, but it's not something that is really for me.
Yeah, it had a lot of good potential. If it was reworked a little bit, it would have been a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Who knows? Maybe this is one of those teams that will actually do better once they make it back to DC's Earth.
Yeah, could be. They just need some traction.
Yeah, I mean, I know in recent issues Naomi has joined up.
Yeah, I'd heard that.
Yeah. All right.
This podcast is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
So, anything you guys are thinking about? I have room for something to be brought up.
For the next week?
Yep.
Is the Female Furies miniseries or series?
I think that
Does
mini's
that one have enough?
concluded. We can do that. I mean, I've never read it before.
It has Big Barda. Yay!
But is it enough?
I still think the titles were a bit redundant.
Yeah, I know. Well, a lot of people only know her as Big Barda and not Barda.
Actually, can I offer one thing to space in between?
Sure.
Because I have nothing against Female Furies. I would like to do something besides DC. I don't want to double up companies 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it did occur to me that there's 5 issues of Marauders out now.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's time to back up and see if the X-Men's new take on the world is cool, at least in one of their stories, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be okay with that.
All right. So next week we'll do the Marauders, and the week after that we will do the Female Furies from DC. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. I know that I've been a little bit off my game, but I'm tired. Give me a break. Hopefully after the football I will have a lot more food in my system and be easier to deal with. Not likely, but I thought I'd try. Have a great one. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
The Cosmic Library is now closed.